What's up, everyone? True Techno Gamer here, and this is just a quick PSA, public service announcement. I gotta go in a little bit, so just bear with me for my little rant here. Recently in the news, there's been some talk about how Sony is being anti-consumer, specifically because they've announced a policy where PS4 controllers will not be compatible with the PS5 for playing PS5 games. However, you can use PS4 controllers to play PS4 games in backwards compatibility mode on your PS5. So somehow that information has spawned, especially I'm calling out IGN and Ryan McCaffrey in particular, but in general the folks there, they did a editorial piece on how basically that was again anti-consumer, and it gives Microsoft an edge now because of that policy. And I don't understand why this is even a thing. I even mentioned this to my wife, who is not a gamer at all, has played games throughout the years, and she was even aware enough to know when I stated that what the policy was. There's no story there. There's no news there, because that's how every console in history has operated. So let me go in for a minute. They're bringing out the Stephen A here. This is the Stephen A coming out. I'm not going to bring him all the way out, but this is a non-issue, and I just want to make sure that this is clear. If you're following my channel, make sure this is clear. So let me set up what the situation is, and let me explain why this is a non-issue. And if I'm wrong, if you have another opinion, please let me know. That's why I'm putting it here. Let me know. Drop a line, drop a comment. I want to know what's the gap here, because I don't get this. That is how every freaking console in history has worked. Let's go back real quick. For those old enough to remember, if you had a Nintendo, I mean like the original Nintendo, if you remember that controller, pretty small rectangular thing, had a D-pad, had two buttons, right? When the Super Nintendo came out, Super Famicom, right, for some folks, that controller was a little bigger and had 6 buttons. That was one of the first controllers that had 4 face buttons plus 2 shoulder buttons. Games made for the Super Nintendo, obviously, took advantage of that controller, of having 6 buttons and a D-pad. Did anyone play any Super Nintendo games with their original Nintendo controller with 2 buttons? Were there any games that were even made and designed that was compatible with the original Nintendo controller? What about when you went from your Sega Genesis to your Sega Saturn? Sega Genesis had 3 face buttons. Sega Saturn had 6 face buttons again. What about when you went from Super Nintendo to the N64? N64 had that triple grip controller with a Z button in the back and an analog stick for 3D, which is, that was the advent of 3D for Nintendo. And then those 4 yellow buttons for the camera controls, etc. Was anyone playing any N64 games with the Super Nintendo controller? No. I mean, do I need to keep going? I mean, even in the PlayStation case, where the PlayStation 1 controller was actually really similar, as we know, the PlayStation controller has at least aesthetically looked very similar across all generations up until arguably the PS5. PS4 as well, DualShock 4 deviated a little bit, but PS1, 2, and 3, the controller pretty much looked the same. So you could look at it and say, yeah, I mean, it had the same number of buttons, it had dual analog sticks, that kind of stuff. But even then, when you had a PS1 controller, you couldn't use that on your PS2 to play PS2 games, even though the PS2 was backwards compatible with the PS1. It wasn't a thing. This has never been a thing. The only reason why this is a story is because Microsoft, as I've pointed out here, is fundamentally trying to change the game with the Xbox Series X and Series S and whatever else they're going to come up with. But for their new generation, they're essentially bringing, as I mentioned in my video, check it out, they're essentially bringing the PC model to the consoles with this next generation. What that means is everything works on everything. So Xbox is about PC and every Xbox console, at least going back to Xbox One. And then all the variations of that. Xbox One, One S, One X. And then now Series X, Series S. If you have a controller right now for your Xbox One, it'll work on your Xbox One, your Xbox One X, the PC, and the new upcoming Xbox Series X. Similarly, if you might have heard, Microsoft just actually shipped, apparently, some people actually got it at home, a new white Xbox controller that is modeled as the new design controller for Series X. But it's not a Series X controller. Again, there is no Series X controller. There is just an Xbox controller that works on everything, right? So that new controller works on your Series X, but it also, people are buying it now, and it works on your PC and your Xbox One. That's Microsoft's strategy, and guess what? That is the exception. That is not the norm in this business, okay? What Sony is doing is the norm, has been the norm forever, okay? So don't come at me with this is like anti-consumer or somehow this gives Xbox an advantage, okay? That's BS, right? And let me count the ways here, okay? Number one, like I mentioned, this is not new. Every console generation has done this. If anyone has been playing console games, they should be used to this. So it shouldn't be a surprise. Number two, there is no additional cost involved with this strategy. If you want to play PS4 games on your PS5 system, you can do so using either a PS4 controller or a PS5 controller. And as it has been custom, you can bet your bottom dollar that the PS5 will ship with at least one PS5 controller. So you already have that. So you can play. Even if you don't have a PS4, you never had a PS4 controller, you can still just use the PS5 controller to play on that. Now, if you're someone who already has a PS4, again, you can move that forward and play PS4 games on your PS5. Right? Now, if that was not the case, I can kind of see people talking about this argument in light of how things are in 2020 with Microsoft and their strategy. If, PS5 was backwards compatible with PS4, but you could not use the PS4 controllers for some reason, then I can kind of see the argument. You can use the controllers that were designed, or that those games, PS4 games, were designed for and have been being used for the last 7 years. You can use those controllers on your PS5. Done. That's it. The issue here is using those controllers with PS5 games. Why would you want or need to do that? PS5 is a new console. New console, new capabilities, new controller with new capabilities. Games designed for those new capabilities. PS4 controller does not have those new capabilities. So why would you want or need to do that for the PS5? PS5 is going to have new stuff. So the PS5 controller is the way to go, which you already have in the box. If you had a PS4 and want to play your old games in the way that you were used to, I guess, and not really use the PS5 controller, you can do that. It works. That's the policy. Now, the only time that there's a gap potentially here is for those who, let's say, have been on Xbox and have not migrated to PS4, and they jump into PS5, so they never had a PS4. Well, if they're doing that and saying, hey, I want to go back and check out some PS4 games that I missed, well, you can do that with either the PS5 controller, or or you already have in the box, or then you might want to go, if you so choose and prefer that, you can go buy a DualShock 4 controller. You don't have to, though. That's up to you. That's your choice. If you just wanted to do that, but you can, and it will work. So there's not a need to spend any money here, right? People are talking about, oh, these controllers are so expensive, and as if Sony is somehow forcing you to buy a controller. You don't have to buy a controller. It's a moot point. And if you did, in that example I gave, it's the PS4 controller, which probably will be cheaper than the PS5 controller at the very least. But that's on you. Sony isn't forcing you to do that, and they're not creating an environment where you have to do that. So that's just ridiculous. Don't put that on them. Point number 3. People are talking about, oh, for all of the people that bought these expensive, third-party controllers that in many cases are like over $100 for PS4, and now they can't use them. Again, That is how it has been for over 4 decades in gaming now, console gaming now. You do not buy a controller of any sort, first party, third party, for a current system to play those games with the idea in mind that you're going to be able to play it on some arbitrary system that hasn't even been designed yet or conceived yet in 10 years or 5 years. If you do that, then that's on you, not being very bright. That's not how this stuff has ever worked. Now, it has worked like that on the PC. And Microsoft is now saying that it will work like that on the Xbox. So if you really want to buy your peripherals once and just reuse them and not really move forward and, you know, not gain anything new capabilities in the future, then get an Xbox or a PC. And that's where you live. But for consoles in general, not just PlayStation, even Xbox up until now, but and Nintendo, but for consoles, you don't buy a third-party controller thinking and expecting that you're going to be able to use it in 10 years on some future device that doesn't exist yet. That's just never how that has been. And the idea of generations and new capabilities fundamentally negates that logic, right? That's not going to be capable. That's not going to be possible. Granted, Sony has said that your racing wheels and, you know, a lot of your third-party products will work. Just not the actual controllers, but a lot of those other peripherals will work on the PS5. So again, they're throwing us a bone, and that's a great bonus. So this whole thing just really pissed me off. Again, IGN really, you know, pushing it. Microsoft and some folks at Microsoft, some management, Aaron Greenberg, I believe himself, you know, had tweeted out how this was wrong, anti-consumer, and that's where this whole thing started, from Microsoft and then from IGN, Microsoft affiliates, essentially. Most people don't see this as a problem, which is great. I've seen a lot of the actual users and the fans. They don't see this as a problem, and it's not. So just be clear. I just want to be clear on what is happening, what the situation is. But this is not a discussion, right? What is there wrong here, right? If you know, the PS5 controller is better than the PS4 controller in every way, even just the ergonomics, not even just the features. So why would you not want to play your PS4 game with that more comfortable controller if you could? But if you didn't, then yeah, bring your PS4 controllers up. It works. I can see the argument if, again, you could not do that, if somehow they were forcing only PS5 controllers on you, even though still no extra cost. But if you just said, I want my PS4, I prefer that. Okay, I can see that. You know, that being a somewhat, you know, valid argument, I would say. That's not the case. Right? That's not the case at all. Let's see. I also can see the argument if, again, they were forcing you to spend money for some reason. Like, you're like, hey, you got backwards compatibility on the PS5, but in order to use it, you have to go and spend money on this. You have to buy the special controller. You have to buy this adapter or something like that. Then I can, you know, see the argument here. So argument here, guys. So please, just drop it and stop it. People just finding stuff to complain about, stop it. If you really care about that stuff, you want to just stay in your peripheral forever and ever, that's what the PC platform does. That's what it's for, quite frankly. If you've been playing console games, you already know what to expect. And if you are a fan of the idea of generations and actually moving things forward and so, etc., then you should be excited. That's all for me right now. True Techno Gamer out. Until next time.